3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Nittany No Huddle Podcast.
From Philadelphia to Los Angeles
And everywhere in between.
filmed at the Nittany No Huddle studio.
It's Jordo, Zach, and Coach Devin covering all things Penn State football all the time.
This is from 45 and it's blocked. Lions scoop it up. Brad Haley will score.
And here we go.
Welcome back, Nittany No Huddle Nation. I got Devin and Zach on the line here. So after the big bye week, we are headed into probably the game of the season for both teams. Will really depend who wins this game, who's going to have a chance at the Big Ten title still, most likely. So we got Penn State at Michigan, big noon kickoff, no night game. Little surprising, but it's Michigan and the Big Ten. We don't really play night games. So Michigan favored by 7 points and the over-under set at 52. So they're anticipating kind of a lower scoring game is what it looks like, which kind of surprising considering both teams have put up bigger numbers, but both teams also have pretty solid defenses. So we'll just start right into it. We'll look at Penn State's offense versus the Michigan defense. Devin, do you want to take a crack at any of the positions to start off, or do you want me to just cover some stats to start?
You can go ahead with some stats.
Yeah, so just we can go over like by the numbers. This is a little bit more defense oriented, but Penn State hasn't lost by more than 4 points since they lost at Ohio State last year. So that's kind of a surprising stat. So I was kind of surprised to see Michigan favored by 7 because everything indicates that it's probably going to be a closer game, in my opinion. That's how I see it. Also, Jim Harbaugh 4-3 versus James Franklin. So he has the advantage right now. We could see it being tied up. And the last thing I'll hit on too is Penn State has given up less than 80 yards rushing per game. So looking at Michigan's offense, I think that's going to be a huge, can Penn State's defense stop the Michigan running game? So I'll turn it over to you, Devin. What do you got for us stat wise?
So a couple numbers that really stood out to me looking in preparation for this game is third downs. Obviously, Penn State is going to be – I think this is a game where Michigan's going to force third downs. Like you said, I think it's going to be a low-scoring, a real slugfest type game. And Penn State right now is ranked 103rd in all FBS in third down offense, which is just terrible. I mean, 33% they're converting, 11th in the Big Ten. Just not great. And then
what's our fourth down percentage?
I don't have that right in front of me. I didn't write it.
I feel like we've converted a good bit of fourth downs this year. So
I don't know. Maybe Zach has it, but I actually didn't look at that. I just looked at third down. Because the other reason why I looked at third down so much is because Michigan's third down defense is 26th in all of FBS.
Yeah.
So they're not allowing other teams to convert third downs, and we aren't converting a lot of third downs. We're 1 every 3. So that could be a big telltale difference come Saturday morning.
Yeah. I agree. I saw those stats too, and it kind of jumped out at me as like that could be kind of the tail of the tape fighting wise. But then I remembered that Michigan has played nobody with a pulse all year. So it's
true.
like, how inflated are their stats versus how bad are we on third down?
Right.
So, Zach, what do you think about third downs?
Yeah, so Devin, he must have stolen my notes for this because the third down conversion rates were something that immediately jumped off the chart to me. And I think the problem, if you're Penn State, is that Michigan is a team that forces you into needing to convert a lot of third downs, right? They don't give up a lot of big plays. They're going to get you off schedule on first down. The big thing for me is you got to try to negate that third down problem by being really successful on first down. If this is the type of game where the running game's not there and we're just picking up a yard or two on first down runs, to me, it's maybe more indicative of we got to throw early and we got to try to get ahead of the sticks a little bit because you just can't get a little too conservative and go, first down run, second down run, and then just be in 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6 all game long. One thing that's kind of interesting, and I've talked about through the weeks is I felt like Michigan was going to have a big drop off at what I think is maybe the most important, obviously the line of scrimmage, but the defensive end position. They had two guys that were first and second round, Hutchinson and Ojabo, who I think got hurt, but was just an absolute stud last year.
Yeah.
And they just kind of, with those two guys, that made everything they did defensively click. And so I was curious to see if they would be able to keep that up. And actually, they're getting after the quarterback at the same, if not better, rate this year. As far as sacks per game, they're
competition depending though.
Yeah, right. So a lot of this with Michigan and some of the statistics with Penn State, same issue, but more so with Michigan. But regardless, with the competition they've played, whatever it might be, they are getting after the quarterback. So that's I think that goes hand in hand with the third down issue, that they're forcing teams into third down situations and not those types of manageable third down situations like 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. And their ability to get after the pass rusher just goes hand in hand. And that's why teams aren't converting in third down. So I think Penn State has to stay out of that. And that either happens through the running game shows up and the offensive line kind of grows up this Saturday and really continues to churn out 4 and 5 yards a pop so that we're not in those 3rd and 10 scenarios, or maybe the game plan is to come out, be a bit more aggressive and throw on earlier downs. I don't know, depending on what you think of Clifford, that may not be a good idea, but regardless of how we go about it, I think it's really crucial that Penn State stays out of needing to complete 4 or 5 third downs over a long drive to score touchdowns, because I don't know that's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. And good point bringing up Clifford versus the pressure. Good thing is he's had about 15 years of running for his life back there in the backfield. So I think he has a little bit of experience, if they're able to get that pressure. The biggest thing for me too, speaking of the O-line, is are we going to see that big push like you're talking about? I know we thought Auburn was going to be that test for us, and I feel less confident after that Auburn domination, but it was like, well, maybe Auburn is just awful on the defensive line. So I was hoping to kind of get that, SEC D line test in, be a good test to see what we'll do against Michigan, but it kind of turned out to not be that way. But speaking of quarterback play, Clifford, this will be his 40th start, which is kind of crazy. I know a lot of our fans probably hate the fact that I'm bringing that up. But on the flip side, we have McCarthy, who is only in his 5th start. So that kind of ties into my thought process of, I think we have a good chance to get after McCarthy early and maybe force a turnover, because according to all the stats I'm seeing, we have had a 28.1% of all possessions the defense has gone against has resulted in a turnover, which is kind of a ridiculous stat if you think about it. So could we see McCarthy possibly, throwing an early pick and setting us up for a good chance, to get some points early, which also goes into Jim Harbaugh's record of leading going into third quarters. So he's 61-4 when up going into the fourth quarter. He's 5-20 when trailing. So when the first 3 quarters, you win the game essentially against Harbaugh. But Devin, what do you got for us?
Yeah, so hitting on a couple things that you and Zach have said there in the last couple seconds. Thinking about Penn State's offensive line is a huge concern for me because of how well Michigan has pass rushed this year. Franklin brought it up in his press conference yesterday or this morning, whichever day it was. Every day blurs together. Talking about how other teams, to Zach's point, other teams have abandoned the run because they've been forced to, because they've been losing by larger margins, and they've had to find more passing to try to come back. Hopefully we aren't in that situation. Jordan, I know you know that stat about Sean Clifford. I'll let you bring that up here in a minute, about pass attempts, or maybe that was Zach. I don't remember. But Michigan has forced 22 sacks this season. More importantly to me, the fact that the last 3 games are clearly the 3 best teams they've played, Maryland, Iowa, and Indiana. They've had 14 sacks in the last 3 games. It's very worrisome to me because I'm still not convinced our O-line is great. And if we can't run and we have to rely on Sean Clifford to pass, I don't think there's any single micro chance of us winning. It's just not going to happen. We have to have some sort of a running game. And then to your point about turnovers, it's huge that Penn State right now is 13th in all of college football in the turnover margin. Leading the Big Ten, doing a great job of forcing turnovers. They've, I think, 13 or 14 this year. I forget exactly what the number was, but they're 13th overall. Michigan is in 27th, so they're also forcing a good bit of turnovers. But like you said, you look at Michigan's schedule, and I'm just not convinced yet that they are who they think they are, even though I think they're really good. And I'm not sure about Penn State. So obviously, this is a really big test for both teams.
Yeah, and I will say the one advantage we have is we've played close game on the road already this year.
And we've had 2 tough road games. I mean, even though Auburn sucks, it's definitely no joke going into Jordan Hare. We made jokes about it, but it's a tough place to play.
Yeah. I mean, just temperature wise alone, going down to the south in the beginning of September, like it's tough no matter how you slice it. So yeah, I think we have been tested at least, where I don't feel like what Michigan had to travel to Maryland, like that's basically a home game for them. Like
I think they had Maryland at home, and last week they were at Indiana.
They were on the road the last 2 weeks. Yeah. Iowa and Indiana.
They did not look good at Indiana, to be honest. Like that was a 1-point game going in late fourth quarter. So,
and even the Iowa game, they kind of just like they were like a boa constrictor that just kind of wrapped Iowa up early and then just kind of squeezed the life out of them.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like Iowa kind of makes games look like that, where it was pretty convincing, but the score, I think it was 27-14, didn't look like a blowout, but at no point in time did it feel like Iowa was going to ever.
And this is the Iowa team that barely could score against South Dakota State. So,
yeah, I mean,
that's why I'm
the less said about Iowa, the better. But
yeah, exactly. I do think Michigan has a very good defense. Like just watching them, they tackle very well. They don't blow assignments. They're very contained kind of defense, but I just don't think they've played anybody like Maryland is by far the best offensive opponent they've faced, and
they gave up 27. So a team with athletes comparable or hopefully not even to the level of Penn State's athletes was able to move the ball and score on Michigan. So I think if you're Penn State, you look at the Maryland game and you try to take some takeaways. What was Maryland able to do? At the end of the day, I think it was largely get the ball into their athletes' hands in space, right? And for me, if Penn State, the biggest thing, and I talked about this last week, I think, is I feel like we don't have a guy that can take the top off the defense. We've got a couple of receivers that we like. We've got some tight ends that are playing well, but I just think we don't have that guy that just scares you over the top, a KJ Hamler or even a Dotson with that type of elite speed that just makes you think about always keeping the safety over the top. And interestingly, Michigan, like the early Harbaugh years, if you remember, their defensive MO is they just packed the box, they brought the blitz every down, and they trusted their corners to hold on long enough for the blitz to get home. And it was, if you remember Don Brown, the defensive coordinator, and they did the same thing every game. And if they were better than you, they just annihilated you up front. And if they weren't, like Ohio State was able to throw the ball on them. And they've actually kind of morphed into a more traditional defense. Jordan referenced earlier that they look good. They tackle well. They don't give up big plays. So they've kind of changed a little bit, interestingly. So I think Harbaugh has maybe kind of softened up a little bit, but whatever it might be, they're definitely a good defense. I think there's something to be said, and you guys have both hit on this, that we don't maybe know who they are completely yet just because of the schedule, but they are at home. And I'm a big believer that, being at home is worth a couple points for sure. So we'll see. From a Penn State offense standpoint, I think early in the game, just kind of survive. I'm not saying like go 3 and out and punt for the first 4 drives, get some first downs, help your defense out, because I think this game is going to be won with the defense. If it is to win. So make sure your defense isn't on the field all game. One thing interesting to me, talking about that concept, Michigan and Penn State both averaged 32 minutes time of possession. They're tied actually in terms of the time of possession stat, which was odd for me because with Michigan's opponents, you would have thought they'd have just been dominating possession. Maybe some of like the Hawaii and Colorado State game, they just were scoring so fast that they didn't have the ball. But I think that, and I know a lot of the sabermetric people will say time of possession doesn't matter. It's like batting average or whatever. It's an outdated stat, but I think it does matter. And I think in this type of game where, again, I feel like if Penn State wins, you're going to point to the defense showed up. They held Michigan to under 21 points or something around there. And that's not going to happen if you're going 3 and out every drive and punting the ball from your own 20 and giving them a short field. And we talked about Barney and Moore to death and for good reason. I think he's been a stud. So for me, the first quarter, get a couple first downs. If you have to punt, be sound on special teams, and just kind of survive early and give your defense a chance to kind of take over.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of giving your defense a chance, a stat that really kind of shocked me because everybody just talks about Joey Porter Jr. and Abdul Carter to death, especially every commentator. Our pass defense is ranked 120th right now.
Not so fast. Not so fast, my friend.
Oh boy. Am I getting corrected on the spot?
I made the mistake of lurking onto some Michigan blogs and message boards this week, and there's no greater wretched hive of scum and villainy. But Penn State's pass efficiency defense, which looks not at volume but at the rate that teams are successful in terms of the pass game, is ranked 7th in the country. So I think there's a number of games, including the Auburn game, where Auburn threw for like 200 yards in the second half when the game was out of hand and we were playing our third stringers. And so I was reading a lot of Michigan folks that thought, oh, JJ McCarthy, if you look at his pass completion this year, it's 78%. Okay, cool. Look at some of the competition you played. I think some of their folks think that this is a game where our secondary is a weakness and they're going to come in and just throw the ball all over us. And, Jordan might agree with them, but I have to think Harbaugh is a little smarter and has scouted well and actually realizes Porter can play, King can play, Jair Brown can play. I think they're going to come in with the same kind of mind frame that we are, which is run the ball, slow the game down, make sure you're taking care of your defense. It's probably going to be a low scoring game. We'll talk about the Penn State defensive picture when we get there, but I just had to correct the record.
I was just kind of surprised. I didn't look into the stat. I was on some of those Michigan blogs as well, and I saw that. So that's why I was like, that seems very odd considering our defensive completion percentage is 49.6% for opposing quarterbacks. So it's like we're ranked 120th in pass D, but their opposing quarterbacks are only completing less than 50% of their passes. So that cleared it up more that we're actually, talking about efficiency versus just raw, stats. Especially when you factor in Purdue, who threw it for 65 times against us.
Right.
Yeah. But Chuck Sizzle did have a game, so. But yeah, it was just kind of interesting. So I guess we can just we'll move on. Just kind of go through the positions. We'll start off with the quarterback battles. We can just do both teams at the same time. Who do you guys think has the advantage? I want to lean towards Clifford just for his experience being on the road. He hasn't looked great the last 2 games, but he hasn't really needed to be honest. I think it's one of those games where Clifford kind of gets up for these bigger games. And you saw the Auburn game this year. Now, granted, Auburn hasn't looked good at all, but I think Clifford has that experience where this is the first big game McCarthy has really played in. So what are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, that your last comment there is exactly what I was going to say. I think he's done really well. From what I can tell from watching the parts of the games that I've seen, I think he looks good. And I think he's playing with confidence. And unfortunately for Cade McNamara, I think the injury that he suffered is probably contributing to that, because finally somebody, is actually getting to play and not have to worry about looking over their shoulder. And obviously McCarthy's pretty athletic too. So, the quarterback scrambles is definitely something that you're going to have to watch for. Which it makes it really hard when you're facing a good offense that can run the ball, but has been really efficient in the passing game. And then you have an athletic quarterback on those third and 10, third and 12s where you're trying to play a bit of a deeper zone and take stuff away. And then it just opens up that underneath run. So that's something to watch, because I think he's a pretty athletic kid. I don't want to say I don't want to harp too much on Michigan's schedule because they've played well and they have really talented kids. But to Jordan's point, this will be the first game where, he's playing against across the board talent level that pretty much matches up with him and the guys on his side of the ball. So that'll be something to watch. Not
experience too. I mean, you look at, not to harp home on it, but Joey Porter Jr. out there, teams are afraid to throw towards him now. And that could be part of the hype, but also, he is very smart defensively, not the greatest tackler, but he puts himself in a position where he has a chance to be an effect on the play. And that's something I don't think, McCarthy has really seen out of some of the teams they've played so far. So it'll kind of be interesting to see the strategy of, are they going to let him, kind of run the offense, or are they going to throttle him back, line up in their, Maryland eye and just kind of run it with Corum for a little bit?
Maryland eye, play action, fullback flat.
Yeah.
Harbaugh loves to run to the fullbacks, we'll talk about, I think, Michigan's tight end when we flip over to the defensive side for Penn State. But
yeah, Devin, what do you got? What do you think quarterback wise?
So if your question is which quarterback is better, the answer is going to be
Drew Aller.
I should have thought of that myself. But I think Jim McCarthy is a better quarterback because I think he is a younger, more accurate Sean Clifford. So I have to give him a little bit of an advantage there. I totally get what you guys are saying about not playing in big moments. His first start in like a huge game. I think he got enough reps last year in some pretty big games that I'm not really worried about that. And like Zach just mentioned there, and Jordan, you mentioned it too, he's not going to throw it a lot. Like I just don't see that. If he throws it more than 25 times, that means Penn State's in a pretty good position because they're just going to pound it with Corum all day. The same should be said for Clifford. Can we keep him at 26 to 30 pass attempts maximum? Then I think we're in a good position and we have a good chance of winning. If he starts getting into that 35 to 38 range, probably means we're trying to come back from a big deficit and it's not going to go well because he's going to throw bad passes at some point, just pure volume. So I would give McCarthy the edge as the better quarterback. I just don't know if he's going to prove it on Saturday because I think they're going to be able to run the ball enough that our bend don't suck defense will be able to stop them from scoring touchdowns. But I think Corum's going to run it down the field. So,
yeah, and that. Speaking of, our bend don't suck defense, I think I have a stat somewhere. We're second in red zone defense, I believe is from what I saw. So
I just got off that page.
One of the only areas where we're actually seemingly better than Michigan, just from a pure statistical standpoint, is red zone offense and red zone defense. So Penn State has scored on 95% of its red zone trips offensively, and they've only given up points on 66% of their opponents' drives into the red zone, which is good for 8th in the country. Not that Michigan's been bad; they're ranked 20th from a red zone defense standpoint and 25th from a red zone offense standpoint. But Penn State's in the top 15 in both of those categories, and from a defensive standpoint, that goes back to last year. I mean, the red zone defense Penn State played last year, and then so far this year has just been really, really good. Yeah. And if you're going to play that type of, we're gonna give you yards and we're not going to take chances, you really have to buckle up in the red zone and make them, make sure they're kicking field goals.
Yeah, and not only that, but we've been getting turnovers in the red zone too, which is that's even more demoralizing because essentially you're going from getting points to possibly losing points going the other way. So I think those are going to be the kind of matchups we're going to see. But with Michigan in the red zone, I feel like they are very run heavy in the red zone as well. So it'll be interesting to see how Manny Diaz lines us up, and if we see a little bit more blitzing instead of coverage in the red zone, which I feel like we've been more on the coverage side in red zone the last few games. But we'll move on. One last thing with the quarterbacks, I think Drew Aller should be, ready to go in the game this week, just because with Michigan's pressure they've been able to get and Clifford's susceptible to injuries, I could really see, Clifford getting blindsided once and maybe, hopefully he doesn't get hurt or anything. But I think there is a real possibility when you're playing some of these teams that have these athletes that are faster, hit harder, I mean, it's not like Clifford hasn't been taking abuse so far. Like, he's been hit a lot already. So that it's kind of one of those things where I wouldn't be completely shocked if Clifford happened to get hurt this week and Drew Aller comes in, is the savior that Devin hopes he is.
Also, I mean, not to steal your thunder there, but it also wouldn't surprise me coming off a bye week if they have some sort of a package in place. Obviously, they haven't really done different packages for the first 5 games. They haven't really needed to. This is that time of the year where you start breaking out wildcats. You start breaking out different packages. It just
Exactly.
wouldn't surprise me if they have a couple plays for Aller designated, unless they're still trying to save his red shirt because he didn't play last week or 2 weeks ago. So he could still red shirt technically.
Yeah. Well, in that case, we might see. I don't even know how to pronounce his last name, but
No one does. Canadian.
Valer.
There.
What is Franklin always calls him like by his
Tigers.
initials? I forget what his first
CV.
name is, but
CV.
CV, yeah.
Devin definitely raised a good point though with Penn State coming off a bye. Does that mean, just from a big picture, does that translate to the team being better prepared? In some cases you see it go the other way. Penn State had a bye week before Illinois last year where offensively they came out and looked horrific, right?
I have a stat on that too then when you're ready, Zach.
What's that?
I have a stat on that too when you're ready, but I'll let you finish.
Penn State off the bye week. Yeah. I mean, on one hand, I think it can go either way. And it just depends on the group of players and coaches that you have and how productive you are with that bye week. And some coaches might say they hate the bye week because you have the schedule that you're building on week after week after week. And then the bye week is just kind of throws it all into disarray and you're trying to do something different. But yeah, I mean, maybe there's a chance that they come out with an Aller package. We'll see.
I will say, as far as the bye goes, I saw on Instagram that Sean Clifford was out in a pumpkin patch last week with his girlfriend. So that's a little concerning. Like, I want you studying film 24/7. Like, got Michigan coming up.
He's got to keep his kids happy. He's got to be out with his wife and kids, man. I don't know what to tell you. The grandkids are coming.
Rivers?
Yeah, the grandkids are on their way. He's got to keep them all happy. Anyways, the bye week. Penn State under James Franklin, regular season bye weeks, 2-5 under James Franklin. But they knew that, and they actually added extra practice this year that they usually don't. They usually give more days off than they did this cycle because of the analytics and all that stuff of being 2-5. So I think that's really interesting that they added more practices this year with the understanding that they have not played well after bye weeks traditionally.
Yeah,
and some of that I think is they've had a number, at least 3 or 4
really good teams. Yeah,
have been Ohio State or Michigan that they played. And in 2016 was a good example where it went the other way, where we can say maybe it was a good thing. Penn State, really struggled out of the gate early in 2016, and people probably forget that huge program-defining win over Ohio State was after a bye week. So it just depends. I mean, if you have a bunch of locked-in kids that are ready to go and utilize the bye week appropriately, it's probably a good thing. If you don't, maybe it's not a good thing.
Yeah, I think too, speaking of adding those practices, I used to be such a James Franklin hater, but he is just doing everything right this year. And I know I'm not the biggest sabermetrics guy. Like sometimes I think you have to go off the field of the game, but everything he's been doing is how I think a coach should be, acting like, hey, we've been terrible off buys under me. We're going to add an extra practice because I think we need it. We haven't looked sharp the last 2 weeks. We're adding in the practice. That's what I want from my 10-year coach.
We're going under center, after him saying for years, we'll never do that. And we don't practice it. And I think to Jordan's point, and I like Brent Pry. I think he was a good defensive coordinator for Penn State. I think there was a number of years where the defense carried the team. But I think right now, especially with year 6 and year 2, Penn State is locked in from a coaching standpoint as well as they have been under James Franklin, just in terms of having coordinators in place that I think he's just trusting and he's letting them do their thing, because the defense is doing a lot of different things than what we've normally seen. And offensively, they're, like we just said, with going under center, a lot of run game stuff that I think we just haven't really seen before, in terms of doing both a lot of zone and a lot of, pulling guard and combo action.
Yeah.
So it tells me he's kind of just trusting those guys that he has in those positions to do what they think is best, which I think is what you have to do, right? That's the reason you hire those people.
And maybe it's partly too, as much as we all hated that contract, maybe he's they're giving me 10 years. Maybe now I can relax a little bit and not, act like I'm fighting for my contract every year. So I think that could be a little bit too. Also, having Manny Diaz just in the coaching staff alone. I mean, he coached at Miami for 3 years as a head coach. How many?
I said whatever it was,
Yeah,
3 or 4. I don't
years.
It's
remember.
3 or 4. Having a
Head
head
coach at a major
coach,
program.
yeah,
Yeah.
at a major program, maybe he went in there and was like, hey, like, I've watched all of Penn State's film. Like, these are the kind of things that we need to do better from just a coaching standpoint. Like, because if you look at our timeout usage, that's the thing that's been blowing me away is we don't waste timeouts. And I mean, we've maybe 1 or 2 over 5 games. Like, that's something that killed me under the previous James Franklin, because I really feel like it's 2 different coaches right now. Like, we're not seeing those wasted timeouts. I mean, we're going into 2-minute drills with 3 timeouts, 2 timeouts, and we're scoring points because of it. So I think having that additional full-time head coach in your corner, giving you actual good advice, and maybe Franklin's like, hey, this guy knows what he's doing. Like, he was at a premier program too. So maybe they're more like peers as opposed to, him being the head guy and, Manny Diaz kind of just, being a coordinator.
And the one thing I'll say from like a coaching and operations standpoint, the only area where they've maybe slipped a little bit is the penalties have been a little bit concerning for me. They haven't been terrible in the penalty department, but they are averaging 54 yards a game in penalties, which is good for 56th in the country. Michigan's actually number 9 in terms of the 9th fewest penalty yards. And to Franklin's credit, they've historically been a really good team in terms of penalties, and he's often had a pretty disciplined team. So it hasn't been bad, but there's been a number of games where there's just been a little too many penalties. So that's something to watch, especially on the road. I mean, you go on the road, top 5 team, special teams has to be clean.
Yeah.
Penalties have to be minimal, and you can't.
I think it's all
those are like the basic 3 things you have to do.
Yeah. I think a lot of it too is penalties. Like, what are the penalties? Like, because not all penalties are the same. Like, hey, holding a guy who's going to burn you down the field for a touchdown, I'm cool with that. It's like,
right.
I'll take the penalty all day. Holding on 3rd and 1, yeah, that pisses me off.
Right.
Like,
or the false starts, the illegal formations, I mean, it's one thing you commit a penalty during the course of the action. That's just
right.
part of sports, right?
Yeah.
But the team that limits the mental mistakes the most, I think, is really, those are the things you're looking for. You can't have a lot of false starts and face masks and those types of things.
Right. Like, yeah, I would rather you hold somebody on the line of scrimmage than let your quarterback get blindsided. Like, so yeah, I would agree though. We haven't been the most disciplined, but I think some of those have been situational calls as well. I haven't seen us have a lot of false starts, though. We did have a few down at Auburn, I believe.
We had a fair amount of PI against Purdue, and that's the only team that's really been able to have a decent amount of success against us through the air. And I think part of the Manny Diaz defense is you're going to have to live with that, because we've been able to generate a lot of turnovers, and we've created havoc. We're like far and away the number 1 team in the country in pass breakup. So with all of that good, I think you have to be willing to accept that there's also, you're putting those corners on an island as much as we are. There's going to be some PI, right? You got to kind of have to live with it.
I also don't count any stat after Abdul Carter got hit for targeting. So what, Devin?
Nothing. You just like to make up stats.
The nice thing is I don't think we've had a targeting since then, which is
we
good.
haven't. There should have been one against Clifford, but apparently you're allowed to just punch a dude in the face and then blindside him. So whatever.
Targeting shouldn't even be in football, so who cares?
I think we need more protection for the quarterback, though, like the NFL.
What did Troy Aikman say? Take the dresses off, or
apparently he's getting canceled for that.
He's probably getting a call from HR right now.
But all right, moving on. Speaking of taking the dresses off, how about the running back battle that's going to happen this weekend? We got 3 really great running backs, 2 on Penn State, 1 on Michigan. Blake Corum, Nick Singleton, and Katron Allen. It's going to be, if you like old school Big Ten football, I feel like this is going to be this is like your Super Bowl, Gonna line them up and just 3 yards in a cloud of dirt, hopefully. But what do you guys think as far as the running backs go? I know we didn't really see a great showing last time out with the hurricane that came through and all the fumbles, but that's something that kind of concerns me. I know you can't blame the weather on all of that, but are we susceptible to fumbling the ball from the running back side now?
I'll say maybe. I mean, I think you can look at that. You can look at that game and say that's a problem, and you'd be right. You can also look at the first 4 games and say we didn't have a fumble. I don't think we had a fumble at all in the first 4 games. So, 4 is greater than 1. So maybe the 1 is the anomaly, and the 4 is the thing to put more stock in.
But
And
4
I think
games
with
is
the bye
greater than
week,
1 game.
exactly. And again, with the bye week, that's probably something that they probably, made these guys walk around campus with a wet football in their hands and told all the students to try to punch the ball out. So I'm not super worried about it. I think it was pretty disconcerting to see like everybody fumble. That was for me, fumbles are going to happen, but when everybody decided to have fumbleitis on the same day, that was the really weird part about it. So if it pops
Which
up
makes
again,
me
it's
lean
definitely a
more
problem.
towards that it was condition based and less of an actual problem. Just my gut feeling is like,
Yeah.
if it's sunny and 65, are they dropping the balls? Maybe one of them, but 4 probably not. I think the biggest problem is we didn't recover any of them. But Devin, what do you think running back wise? We got a minute before first break.
I hope Nick Singleton and Katron Allen have great games. Hopefully they get as many carries as they had against Northwestern, but they don't turn it over. That would be awesome. I'm a huge Blake Corum fan. We talked about our Heisman picks last week. I would love for him to have an awful game this week and then just go out and destroy the rest of the teams the rest of the year and win the Heisman. I think it'd be awesome as long as he plays bad this week. But I think he is really legit. I think he's that good. And if he rushes for less than 130 yards, I'll be shocked. That's my number, 130.
All right. So to pick up where we left off, speaking of the running game, Devin hit it. Blake Corum, he's looked every bit a Heisman candidate. Now, granted, like we've been harping on, hasn't really played much of a defense, but I do think he could be poised for a big game. Hopefully, we can really limit him because our run defense has actually been very good this year. I'm trying to look for the stat. I'm sure one of you guys have it on what our run defense is, but I think we're actually 3rd best in run defense. But
so actually, we're 5th
in the
giving
nation.
up 79 yards a game.
79 yards, 5th in the nation.
79 yards, yeah.
Yep.
And yeah, I think that's kind of telling of what this game is going to be. On the flip side, we're technically the 3rd best in the country, and Michigan is the 6th best run defense. So I think we're going to see that, head-to-head fight there in the trenches. So, Zach, I'll turn it over to you. What do you think about the running game as far as our matchup, Blake Corum versus our 2 freshman running backs?
Yeah, so I think Blake Corum is okay. I'm not going to worship the guy like a lot of people. I think Michigan has the best offensive line in the country. They've got 2 fifth-year seniors, left tackle Ryan Hayes, and their center is really, really good. And his name is really, really crazy and long. Olusegun Oluwatimi. He's really good. Trevor Keegan, left guard, redshirt junior. Right guard's a junior. Zach Zinter has been really good. And then Trent Jones is a redshirt junior. So they've got a really experienced, really talented offensive line. I'm a little tongue-in-cheek with Blake Corum. I think he's a good runner. I just think that they're going to have success running the ball in just about everybody they play. So it's a question of limiting the damage. So I think for Penn State, it's just take away the big plays, don't get gashed in the run game, and just really make them earn it and drive the length of the field with long drives. But I don't feel good about going into this game thinking we're going to be able to shut down the run game. I think it's more of a question of just try to limit it as much as possible and and like we talked about on the offensive side, same thing this way. I think it really comes down to first down, right? If you're getting beat up on first down, they're going to run it down your throat. It's going to be 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2 all game long. They're going to pick up 4 or 5 yards a pop, and you're not going to be able to stop them on 3rd down. So really, really first down is going to be crucial in my opinion.
Yeah, and speaking of 3rd down, we are absolutely terrible on 3rd downs. We're like, that's our offense. Well, offense and defense, I feel like we give up a lot of 3rd downs, and maybe that's just a feeling. I don't have the stats up for that, but
defensively, we're actually 20th in 3rd down conversion. Teams are converting at a rate of 35%. Michigan offensively is converting 45% of their 3rd downs which is good for ninth in the country. And again, I think a lot of that is they're dominant on first down. So they're putting themselves in third downs that they can convert. And honestly, for Penn State, we're 20th in the country and defensively on third down. And I have to wonder if you take out like 3rd and 20, we're probably even higher. We've actually we've had a fair amount of big third down plays where it's like 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2, and we've also given up some really ugly like 3rd and 20s. So
Yeah.
whether that's an anomaly or something to be worried about, we'll see. But
And one other stat with that, Zach, Michigan on stat report actually breaks down their third downs, which is really cool. I wish Penn State would do that, and I didn't have to dig for it at all. But Michigan, not only are they converting 45% of their third downs overall, in the second half, they're converting 66% of their third downs in the second half, which is part of pulling away from teams and just slaughtering them.
Up by 40 at halftime.
I know, but I think that's more interesting to me than that their backups are still able to convert third down in those couple of games. The last 3 games, they're 60. Well, I can't read my scribble. 68 or 69, whatever this number is on my note card.
Probably 69.
Probably 69% from third down. So again, just looking at these last 3 Big Ten games, whenever they're hadn't quote unquote looked great, they're still converting all those third downs in the second half. They're only like 23% in the first half. So it's like you said, if we can build that lead whenever they seem to struggle on third downs in the first half, could be a big deal.
Yeah, I think that's where the games can be won and lost, to be honest, is on third down. Because there's a lot of similarities to our offense and defenses this year, surprisingly, because typically we have not looked like a Michigan-like team in the past. But really with our running game working well this year, it's kind of interesting to see how both teams have kind of evolved. So we'll move on, wide receiver room, and we can cover the tight ends too. Zach, I know you wanted to talk about Michigan's tight end play. So I'll turn it over to you. I know you have some stats on them.
yeah, so obviously Ronnie Bell is their leading receiver. He's got 30 catches on the year for 390 yards. Roman Wilson, and then the next highest wide receiver in terms of receptions is Roman Wilson with 12. But Luke Schoonmaker, who is their tight end, has actually really come on the scene. He has got 23 receptions for 229 yards. And last year, actually, with the tight end Eric All was the one who killed Penn State. If you remember, Penn State actually had that game late in the fourth quarter. Arnold Ebiketie had a strip sack. Penn State wasn't able to score the touchdown to put the nail in the coffin. They kicked a field goal, and we're only up 3 or 4. And we got killed on a mesh route, and our 2 defenders ran into each other, and McNamara threw a little 5-yard mesh pass to Eric All, who ran up the sideline. So I think he's been hurt because he only has a couple catches on the year. But Schoonmaker has had a really good year. He's averaging 10 yards a pop, which is pretty good for a tight end. He has a couple touchdowns. I think, again, we talked about I think Harbaugh, I think he's a good coach. I think he's smart, right? I think he's not as foolish as their fan base that looks online at some stats and thinks that our pass defense is a weakness. I think he's not going to want to test Porter and King, and those guys more than he has to. So I would look to see them probably try to utilize the middle of the field, utilize the tight end, try to put some of our linebackers in space. We've talked about the linebackers, throughout, and we'll probably do that once we get to the defensive side of the ball. But that's a matchup where those guys are going to have a tough day. I hope they, answer the bell, but they're going to have to live up to that run game and try to fill gaps and stop the run game, and then also account for their tight end who's averaging 4 catches a game. So that'll be something to watch.
Yeah. And how do you say their tight end's name?
Schoonmaker or Shoemaker? I think it's Schoonmaker.
I watched the end of the Indiana game last week, and he actually had their go-ahead touchdown. So I think that's something too in the red zone. He's going to be a big target for them, especially if they're running their play action with Blake Corum, which, I mean, if you're an intelligent coach, that's what I would do in the red zone. So I think that'll be a good matchup, seeing Abdul Carter, if he's able to cover Schoonmaker. And then as well, if he's covering people, depending on how they're running, if they're running mesh routes or whatever, be aware that McCarthy could run, because we probably won't have a spy on him at that point. So I think those using the tight ends just opens up your playbook so much. And I will say we've done a pretty good job with our tight end, Brenton Strange and Theo Johnson as well. but I'm hoping we can get some more targets out of them because I think that will be huge this weekend, especially those third and sevens. That's like, for a tight end, that's where you're going to make your money. So
Worth mentioning too.
Oh, go ahead,
Sorry,
Zach.
real quick. While I'm looking at Schoonmaker, and this applies to Michigan's offense and defense, but especially on their offense, JJ McCarthy is the only starter that isn't at least a third-year player in the program, and actually most of them are either redshirt juniors, seniors, or fifth-year seniors. So it's a really, really the both sides of the ball is very experienced, but especially on offense, you've got a ton of fourth and fifth-year guys, and some of that might be the extra COVID years is still going to be with us for another year or two, but it's a really experienced, older veteran team.
Well, according to our fan base, that just means they suck. If they were better, they'd be in the NFL, right?
It just means their kids are going to be at the game watching them, according to Devin.
Happens.
It might be past their kids' bedtime. All right, Devin, what do you got tight end wise?
I think you guys pretty much covered everything. I actually, for Michigan, really like Cornelius Johnson. I think his name is Cornelius. I think he could be a big factor. He's their other wide receiver. Just depending on the matchups, what Joey Porter does. Is he on a specific side? Is he matched up with Ronnie Bell? I think that's really interesting. Maybe you guys are better at knowing that stuff than I am. If he is a specific side DB or if he's a matchup DB, I haven't really seen.
I think it's game dependent,
right?
Because Purdue game, he was all over the place. He was on Chuck Sizzle the whole time, essentially. Which I could see them possibly doing that with Ronnie Bell. But speaking of Ronnie Bell, not to interrupt you or cut you off, but I don't think he's the same wide receiver since he got hurt, in all honesty. Because last year he was honestly in the Heisman race, maybe the Heisman leader before he got hurt. He was absolutely, I don't know if you guys remember, but he was tearing it up last year until he got hurt. So I think he had an ACL injury, if I remember correctly. But
sure.
I think he has lost a step because he hasn't seemed, and maybe that's just their game plan. He hasn't seemed as dominant and as explosive as he was last year. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got wide receiver, tight end wise. Zach, yeah, anything else you want to say?
I think we covered it.
All right. Well, I know we kind of hit on offensive lines already, so I don't think we really need to dig into that too much.
I agree.
I am hoping that Penn State can find a way to get Clifford a little bit more pass protection in the passing game and get that push up front. So that's all I'll say about that. I mean, we know what Michigan's offensive line has looked like. So it's going to be, which offensive line can perform out of their ceiling a little bit, I think. So moving on, we'll go switch over to defense, get right into the defensive line, comparing it to Michigan's offensive line. I'm really excited for this game. I think this is a great test for our defensive line, and hopefully PJ Mustafar can have a big game. I'm still kind of waiting for that overpowering dominant performance from him. He hasn't really needed to have that yet, but that's something I'm looking forward to. Zach, do you want to start us off with the defensive line?
Yeah, I think, and we've already kind of hit on this concept generally, that Penn State has to win on first down. They have to not get, annihilated in the run game. And I think that all starts with the front, right? And specifically the defensive tackles. I thought PJ Mustapher and Hakeem Beamon both had really, really good games against Northwestern and really shut down. Obviously not a good offense, not a great running game, but Evan Hall had been a pretty competent running back through the early part of the season for Northwestern. And Mustapher and Beamon, it just seemed like they were really on top of their game. There was a back-to-back plays, I think, on the Northwestern second to last drive where Beamon on the pass rush knocked down 2 passes in a row. And so I think those guys just have to play well. And then Chop Robinson, Nick Tarburton, we're going to need to get some pressure because McCarthy, obviously, again, we've talked about, we don't really know as much because of who they played, but he's got a 78% completion percentage. So he's obviously got arm talent, right? And he knows the system. He knows what he's doing. So there has to be a pass rush. The other thing though is that pass rush has to be sort of measured and making sure everybody's keeping in your lanes, because like we talked about before, McCarthy is an athlete and he can run. So it's going to be a tough task, but I think if you're Penn State, again, the defense, if we're going to win this game, you feel like the defense has to lead the way. And it's going to be a tough ask for the front seven, but they're going to have to answer the bell.
Devin, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Zach pretty much covered everything about Penn State's defensive line. I think Chop Robinson's going to have a big game matchup wise. I think he's going to be able to get some pressure and force McCarthy into some tough throws. Obviously, Mustafa is still huge. He's going to have a good game, I think. He's third on the team in tackles, 17. Just waiting on him to get a couple of TFLs. I feel like he should have more of those by now, but they're coming. I really do think they're coming. And then Tarburton and Beeman. Beeman was a big focal point today or yesterday in Franklin's press conference about how much he's improved over the last just couple of weeks. So I think we'll start hearing his name a lot more on Saturday and into the future.
Yeah, and with our offensive line, it's important to note they haven't directly caused a lot of the turnovers yet, but their pressure has led to a lot of those interceptions. If you go back and watch those interceptions, most of them are the quarterbacks running for their lives and making bad decisions. So I think our offensive line is up to the challenge. It'll be interesting to see our defensive line. It'll be interesting to see Michigan's offensive line if they're able to actually absorb some real pressure for once this season. So it's really interesting because I feel like even though we're 6 weeks into the football season, I have no idea what either team really is at this point. So it's just kind of funny how it works with, especially in college football with the non-conference scheduling and those sort of things. So we'll move on. Unless you guys want to talk about Michigan's defensive line at all. I know we kind of hit on that earlier, so I didn't have anything else to add to that.
Be on the lookout for Maisie Smith. I'm worried that he might have a big game.
Yeah, if it's NCAA 14, he's got a little star around him for this game.
Yeah, exactly.
Zach, you got anything else?
Mike Morris, one of their defensive ends, is somebody that has really, we talked about it a little bit earlier, how they had some question marks, I think, at that position because of the talent that they lost. He's had a really good season. He's a guy that's been getting a lot of pressure off the edge. So I don't know if he'll line up on one particular side or not, but Olu Fashanu, who's been really, really good. And I think we haven't actually talked enough about Penn State's left tackle, who's been really good. And I've been seeing his name on mock drafts. So I don't know
That's
if
how you know he's good, if you don't
Yeah.
talk about him.
That's true. It's true. But he's
For
been,
linemen,
and
yeah.
I think the left side as a whole, we have talked about Landon Tengwall a little bit, but I think the left side has been really good and really solid at center as well. But in any event, Mike Morris is just a name that, whether it's Olufashanu or Caden Wallace or Effner on the other side, those guys have to know where he's at and be prepared for him.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll move on. Linebackers. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know anything about Michigan's linebacking core. I haven't really seen them tested, so I haven't really had to look into them. I know we've kind of beaten to death our linebacking core, and they don't just give number 11 to anybody. So that's all I got to say about Penn State's linebacking core. I expect them to have a good matchup this week with both McCarthy's wheels and getting out of the pocket, using linebackers as spies, as well as them in coverage. I think it'll be a true test to see, is this linebacking core as good as we have thought so far? So I'll turn it over to Devin. You got anything for linebackers?
For Michigan, Junior Colson is leading the team in tackles. He's a redshirt freshman who I think is going to be really freaking good. He does a lot of things still as a redshirt freshman that you kind of scratch your head sometimes, like, that wasn't right. I don't think you should do that. But he's athletic enough that he makes a lot of plays. And I think he'll have a good game. He'll end up blitzing a lot, I think, and attacking Clifford in pressure. Their other big linebacker, Michael Barrett, he's solid. I don't think he's anything insane or like groundbreaking, but he's solid. He's okay. And then on Penn State side, obviously, Franklin talked today a lot about their Mike linebackers in his press conference and how important it is to for them to keep improving. He specifically called out Tyler Elsdon and Kobe King, hoping that they could continue to improve and he expects them to have a really big game on Saturday because they're going to need that position to play well. He feels really confident in the other linebackers and the depth there, but he said they're still working a lot on the Mike linebacker. So those are two names that he kind of called out today or yesterday, whichever day that press conference was. So hopefully they play well, which I think Elson and King have been okay. I mean, obviously they still need work, but for him to kind of call them out, I think showed that he expects more from them. So,
Yeah. Zach, you got anything to add?
Yeah, not a whole lot. I think we haven't seen a ton of Elston and King in a lot of the games in the early going. Obviously the Purdue game, they're often lined up in 3 or 4 wide. Your middle linebackers typically coming off the field in your nickel packages. And frankly, I mean, we've talked before about Penn State having like 7 defensive backs on the field. So, in a lot of those games, the linebacking position wasn't actually super crucial to what the defense was trying to do. I don't think this is going to be one of those games. I think this is a game where Elston or King, one or both of them, is going to be on the field a lot and is really going to have to step up because Michigan's going to put 2 tight ends on the field. They're going to have a fullback in the game a lot of the time. They're not going to be often in the 4 wide sets. So I think the strength of Penn State's defense that we've talked about is the secondary. But if Michigan's smart, I think Harbaugh is probably pretty savvy in this regard. I think he's going to look at formationally what can we do to try to make sure that Penn State's best 11 athletes aren't on the field. So yeah, I think Elton and King are guys that the Michigan game planners are gonna look at and say, what can we do to make them the guys in the spot? Like we don't want to have to try to beat Porter or King. We want to know where Chop Robinson's at. We want to take care of Beeman and Mustipher. Let's try to come up with some schemes to make Elston and King and Jonathan Sutherland make those guys make the plays to beat us.
Yeah, I think that's all spot on. So let's move on. We'll go to secondaries. Obviously, we know where we stand secondary wise. We have Joey Porter Jr., who we're going to get to see what he does against a real receiver. Well, I'll say another real receiver. I guess we did kind of see that with, Mr. Chuck Sizzle, but it hasn't been tested really since game 1. And maybe that's part of the game plan where they're going to just try to avoid throwing into our secondary like we've been talking already. I don't have much on the scouting report for Michigan's secondary. I'll turn it over to Devin. I know you have some stats regarding their secondary if you want to bring those up real quick.
Yeah, the only name that really stands out to me that I think is their best defensive back is DJ Turner, a cornerback. One thing that really stands out when you look at their depth chart, which I know Michigan doesn't post it anymore, but from other websites, you see their defensive backs and it's senior, junior, freshman. And then second string is freshman. So as much as Zach talked about how their offensive line is so good and really their whole offense is so good because of experience, the secondary is an area where they don't have a lot of experience. And beyond the starters, you're getting into 5 true freshmen listed as their backups. You also have a senior in there, Caden Colasar, never heard of him. So he must not be doing anything bad, but he's not doing anything great to be coming off the bench behind 5 seniors or freshmen. So we talked about being able to pass the ball. Maybe there's some matchups there that we really like. Franklin talked a lot about Lambert Smith, if he's going to be back this week. Obviously he left it very open-ended because he always does with injuries. And one of the reporters asked him about, do you feel like you need a number 1 receiver, or who is the number 1 receiver? And he said, oh, we know, and we don't really care. We're just going to throw to whoever's open, which was a good point, I thought. And maybe we start focusing more on specific schemes to get people the ball. We've talked before about Tinsley being really tough, I think. Like, can we get him more crossing patterns or use the speed that Lambert Smith has on the edge, assuming he's healthy, to take some shots with him, like doing things that are more dialed into our specific wide receivers, because I don't feel super confident about Michigan's DBs just because of volume really at this point.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things we could see where as we've been advancing each game, our playbook is opening up and we're, using a little bit more. I think this game has been circled on the calendar since last year. So I think their whole scheme going up is like, hey, we're about to go full throttle into these next 3 games where we're going to need to use our full capability playbook wise. So I would not be surprised if Tinsley had a huge game. I think he's by far our best receiver. I know stat wise it hasn't really shown, but I really think he has the biggest upside, and he just catches the ball, which I love. Like, I know it shouldn't be a thing, but it is. Like, I am a big fan of guys who just go out, catch the ball, and get those extra yards, So I think that'll be a good thing to watch is their DBs versus our wide receivers as well. So Zach, you have anything on the DB side?
Yeah. So and this applies, I think, to their entire defense. They don't really have any stars. I think maybe Mike Morris, he's got 5 sacks. I've talked about him a little bit. Maisie Smith is another name that you hear, but they've kind of been just a really, really solid team-based defense, and everybody's kind of doing their job. I mean, that said, I think DJ Turner, their senior cornerback, he's got a couple interceptions and some pass breakups. I think he's a guy they feel really good about. Rod Moore, one of their safeties, and Devin mentioned they've got some youth in the secondary. He's just a redshirt freshman, but he's made some plays in the games that I've watched. So they've got some guys back there. But I don't think they really have, from a defensive standpoint, relative to a lot of the Michigan teams that we've seen year in, year out. I don't think they have a lot of guys that you just point to and say, oh man, what the hell are we going to do with this guy? Like, there's no way we can stop him. I think it's just more of they're a bit more solid and stable and composed than we talked about it earlier with the Don Brown type defense, where they're not going to give up the big plays. They're not going to hurt themselves. Penn State's just going to have to be sharp, and you're going to have to be, good at sustaining some long drives, because I think they're not going to give up the big plays.
Which is fine because, I mean, wide receiver wise and passing wise, we're not really a big play offense anyways.
Right.
So I think that kind of plays into our that kind of plays to our scheme anyways. So maybe we were able to move the ball pretty well, and they're kind of the same way where they'll let us move the ball and then try to turn it on when it gets closer to the red zone. So we'll move on. We'll just hit special teams real quick. I know we're turning into a Barney and Moore podcast at this point because he is that good. But
more for Heisman.
Barney and friends.
If you want to talk about a player that has the most influence on any team in the country, I think it's Barney and Moore. So, but we'll move on to the kicking side. We could see our place kicking be a problem this week. So this could be a very close game. And I don't have too much faith in our kicking game right now. I know last game was what it was, but I'm worried about it. And that's not a good feeling to have. On the flip side, I don't think Michigan's kicking is anything special either. I turned on
pretty good. Yeah. Jake Moody is pretty solid.
I'll agree with that.
He's not like a superstar, but he's pretty solid. You take away the blocked field goal, he's really 9 for 11 on the year. One miss was over 40 and one miss was what, 54
plus. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was like 54.
He's made 2 kicks over 40 and 1 over 50. So
yeah, he's pretty solid. He also has not missed an extra point, unlike Jake Pinniger, which
missed 2.
Miss extra points. It's not that hard. But I guess I kind of see what you're saying. Like, I don't think Jake Moody's going to go out there and hit a 58-yarder for the win, but he's not going to miss extra points, and it could come down to that in this type of a game.
Yeah, I also don't know what the weather looks like this.
I think it's supposed to be pretty nice.
Yeah,
is what I saw.
Well, just one thing to note is the big house is in the ground, which definitely makes a difference as far as wind coming into it, and it's very open. So, but typically you don't see a lot of wind actually in the bowl itself. So it's kind of different than Penn State that is very open on the side. So you do get that crosswind sometimes. So just a little note from a stadium standpoint. So, but I'll stand corrected. For some reason I was thinking Moody wasn't that automatic, but maybe I'm thinking
you may be conflating him with the former Michigan kicker who was originally committed to Penn State and had the stupid commitment video where he was like getting off a plane and stuff.
Yeah.
Can't think of it. Quinn Nordine.
Yeah.
And he was supposed to be like a stud kicker, and he didn't quite
supposed to be like a 5-star kicker or something crazy. But yeah, I think maybe that's what I was getting conflated a little bit. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about special teams. I mean,
Just
you
don't
can't
lose the
go.
game. You
Yeah.
can't on the road, top 5 team. We talked about it earlier. You have to just hold the line on special teams, right? You got to just match Michigan. We don't need a kickoff return for a touchdown. You can't lose the game on special teams.
We just need a bunch of fair catches or punts inside the 20 that don't go into the end zone, and then on the flip side for kickoffs, just kick it through the uprights every time. Like that's all I want.
So 2 things, Michigan, just before we wrap this up here. Brad Robbins is their punter. I think he's pretty good, really. He's not Barney and Moore good, but he is punting as well as most people in the country right now. He has 9 of his 18 kicks have landed inside the 20. 5 of them have been fair, and he has 8 punts of over 50 yards this year. And then the only other thing, special team wise, obviously we aren't really worried about this because Barney and Moore has been so great, but Michigan's punt return game has been excellent. Sure, we can go back to them not playing anybody, but AJ Henning, he's like a 3rd or 4th string wide receiver. He's been returning for them, averaging almost 12 yards a return, has a touchdown this year. If he gets in space, it could be worrisome because Barney's been so good that, I mean, I guess my question would be, how hard are we really practicing punt coverage when he's been doing so great that we're getting down there and dang the ball and we're not letting any returns anyways? So if he gets any space, that's a little worrisome to me, but hopefully it won't be an issue. Like Zach said, just don't lose the game and it'll be fine.
And on the flip side, our kick returning and punt returning, I feel like has been trash. So
Yeah, it's been mid at best.
But that's all I got for this. Let's move on. Game predictions. So I'm gonna go last, but
I'll go
I'm gonna
first.
start it off with Devin. Who you
Okay.
got, and what's your score prediction?
All right. I'm gonna go Michigan 24, Penn State 17.
Oh,
Michigan wins it. But it's a good game. I think. I
like
think
a
Penn
realistic score.
State's there. They're in it, but it's not enough.
All right, Zach.
So I'm going to go Michigan 27, Penn State 20. I think it's a tight game. I feel a lot better than I have about Penn State going up to Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
2020 doesn't really count because we won up there, and I think we were 0-5 going into that game, and that was when we turned it around. 2018 obviously didn't feel well, got spanked. 2016 we were just, after the Pitt game, we were in bad shape, got spanked. 2014 went up there with a not very good team against a not very good, the last Brady Hoke team, lost a really, really ugly game. So I don't know. I can't remember the last time that I remember Penn State going to Ann Arbor and against a good Michigan team and me feeling like, hey, we've got a real shot here. So I would not be surprised if we win. I don't think this is a game where Michigan blows us out. It could happen. I mean, it can always happen. It's James Franklin on the road against a good team, but I think it's going to be a pretty good game.
Yeah. So for my prediction, contrary to my preseason picks, I'm going Michigan 20. I think we hold them to exactly 20, which feeds into that stat line that I read about Jim Harbaugh. Penn State 26. Let's go State. That is my Xbox, by the way.
Is that why we have 26? We missed 2 extra points.
No, because we kicked 3 field goals.
That doesn't.
We had
math still
2
doesn't work.
touchdowns and
Wait.
2 touchdowns and 6 safeties.
Yeah.
Love it. This is Iowa, Illinois, or something.
Yeah. So we're gonna score 1 touchdown and then kick a bunch
7.
of field goals.
Math still doesn't add up.
So,
Do you know
no,
how math works?
we're gonna score a touchdown, go for 2,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
kick 6 field goals.
Yeah. Jake Pinniger, MVP, apparently.
Yeah.
Just let Barney start kicking field goals.
Yeah. Why not? Same concept.
Can't be any worse.
Yeah. So that's my prediction.
Okay.
And I think
wrote them down.
I think the national media and the punditry is giving Penn State, I think, appropriate respect. I think the line started at like 9 or 10 or something, 8.5,
Yeah.
and it ultimately came down to like 7 or 6.5. So I think
I think it's actually down to 6 right now, but
I think most people see it as like a touchdown game. And again, it's a road game against a good team, so it could get a little uglier than we'd like. But I think we've got every reason to suspect that Penn State can hang around. And if you can keep it close into the fourth quarter, that's the big thing with Michigan is you just can't get too far behind because of their style of play, and just the way they play. They just kind of like boa constrictor you to death, and they just squeeze you. They get ahead and they just squeeze you, and it's really hard to get back into the game.
yeah, I just think it's one of those things where I could see our running backs, Nick Singleton in particular, breaking off a giant run, something that's Michigan really hasn't had to deal with that explosive play yet. And they can find themselves down, especially maybe we get a pick early or something. They could be down, 10 points early. Are they that team that's going to be able to fight back? Who knows? Like there's so many unknowns about their team right now. So
to me, that's a great point. And we talked about JJ McCarthy, and that's the question. Can JJ McCarthy play? Absolutely. Can he lead Michigan up and down the field? Absolutely. We have never seen him have to drive late in the game where it had to happen and it had to be him, right? He's just kind of playing with a lead, playing with a dominant run game. Can Penn State put the pressure on him and make things happen when things aren't going well for Michigan? That to me is the question. If they can't do that, Penn State doesn't win because Michigan's good enough elsewhere on the roster that they'll survive.
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of my thought is I could see us, we have been very good early in games. I mean, you've seen it consistently. We've been scoring early and then we kind of take our foot off the gas. Like if that happens up there, like is Michigan going to be comfortable fighting from behind, or are they going to abandon their run game, try to just pass more? So I think it's going to be a great game. I'm very excited. I love the noon games. I know you guys aren't exactly the biggest fans, but either my day's ruined early or it's great. So
I mean, we were playing Michigan, so you knew it was going to be big noon kickoff. They've played in the last 11 of those, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's 4, but
yeah.
Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson have called like 4 straight Michigan games.
Yeah, they have the whole roster memorized already. But yeah, I'm excited. I think it's going to be a great game. So, and we're going to sign off here real quick, take another break, and then we're going to do our top 10s, and we'll go right into pick'ems too. So. All right, welcome back. We have our guest picker on the line. Tim, did you want to give your prediction for Penn State, Michigan real quick? We just all wrapped ours up. I'm the only one who picked Penn State. Zach and Devin both picked Michigan to win. So,
yeah, sure. I'm gonna go with Zach and Devin on it. I just don't have the gumption or the balls to pick them. I'll go with. It's gonna be back and forth. It'll be a tight game. I'm going to go with Michigan 27, Penn State 24.
that's a good pick.
Pretty much right in the same. We're all kind of in the same area numbers wise.
Yeah, I had 26-20. Zach
I had 27-20 Michigan.
I had 24-14 Michigan.
Oh, 14.
Yeah.
Okay.
No faith.
But I mean, I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, I
always hope I'm wrong.
I will say Devin's actually been pretty close on most of the picks this year.
I've definitely been the closest of all of us. Even Northwestern, I was the closest again.
We'll see. Yeah,
Even though I suck in pick'ems, but I made an impact this week.
Yeah, we're actually all pretty close.
6-2.
Zach, we're within 1 game of each other now.
Yep.
Yeah, I have a
and
1 game lead.
I'm 3 games back.
Devin, and Devin cut the lead to 3 games, which, considering at one point he was like 2-9, is a pretty good turnaround.
Yep.
But he's just been picking opposite of us. That's why.
It works.
So
Smart.
Speaking of Zach, we're gonna start off with his favorite team in the country, Illinois. We got Minnesota at number 24, Illinois. Minnesota favored by 5 points. Kind of a weird spread there, but I'll go first. I hate Illinois because Zach just talks about them all the time. So I'm going Golden Gophers. We're gonna take Minnesota in this one. And then I'll just go around the horn. So Devin, go ahead.
So I really want to pick Illinois because I've just crapped on them the last 3 weeks and then they go out and win. So let's hope that it's reverse strategy. So I'm going to go Minnesota and hope that Illinois just sucks finally because they do.
Do we even have to ask Zach? I'm assuming he's taking Illinois.
Illinois by a
So,
million.
I love Illinois. The defense, I think nobody's talking about their defense. We've talked about Chase Brown. He's great. But their quarterback's hurt. They've been winning by the skin of their teeth. And Mohammed Ibrahim is back from Minnesota. So I'm actually picking Minnesota.
What?
What?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I already wrote down Zach picked Illinois.
I still love Illinois, though. And they still may win the West. I think the winner of the West is going to be like 5-4 in the Big Ten.
It'll be like
Should be
that
a
year
four-way
Pitt
tie.
won their side of the division with like 4 losses. All right, Tim, what do you think?
Yeah, I also think Minnesota's going to win this one. I don't think it's going to be that close, honestly. I think Minnesota goes in there. It's not that challenging in Illinois. I think Tanner Morgan, he's a decent quarterback. They'll go and go for they'll win by at least 2 touchdowns.
2 touchdowns. All right.
Wow.
I like it. So
by the way, before we go on, Tim, right now our guest picker is 6-2. Alex was 6-2. So that's your target mark here. I'm sure we'll have that graphic up after this week. 6-2.
I'm coming in with some strong picks. They'll be a little bit unorthodox, but we'll see what happens.
No strategy is a bad strategy in college football pick'ems.
I never have a strategy.
Yeah.
I'm losing, so that makes sense.
We have one person on here who's over 500. So. But moving on, probably my second favorite game of this week. Number 3, Alabama at number 6, Tennessee in Knoxville. Alabama, 7.5 point favorites, I think is way overrated. I'm going with Rocky Top. Tennessee going to pull the upset. Tennessee is back. I've been hating on them for a long time, but they look pretty good. And I just think Bama sucks, to be honest. I think you can't dominate Texas A&M, or maybe they're just bad against teams that start with T. So I think that like plays in my favorite this week.
Teams.
No, just teams that start with T.
Keep the trend going.
Yeah, that's why I picked Tennessee. So we'll change it up. Zach, you can go second this time.
So if I knew Bryce Young was not going to play, I would pick Tennessee in a heartbeat. I think Tennessee has been very good. Offensively, they've been really good. I think their defense has not been very good, and they've kind of gotten away with it because of how good their offense have been. So I'm a little concerned. Even if Bryce Young doesn't play, the backup cannot. He's a good athlete. He can definitely run. But if Bryce Young plays, I just think from a passing game standpoint, they're going to tear up Tennessee, and it'll be a high-scoring game. So unfortunately, I'm going with Bama. I don't feel good about it, but
I think Bama's got to lose a close game at some point, right?
They have, going back to last year, they have not played well on the road. They've been in a lot of games. Even the Arkansas game this year, it ended up looking like a comfortable win, but at one point late in the second half, it was like 28-23. So they just haven't been great on the road. And the SEC homers would tell you it's just tough to win on the road in the SEC, because Missouri is so good. But anyway,
was it for Penn State? But yeah. All right, Tim, who you got?
I'm gonna go with Tennessee. Hendon Hooker, he's legit. He
can throw some dimes.
And I'm going off the basis that Bryce Young is not going to play. I haven't heard one way or the other yet. But even if he does play, it's been 15 straight for Alabama. It's the streak. If it was going to end now, I mean, it just has to end now, because if they don't beat them this year, when will they? So it definitely helps that they're at home. So I'll go with Tennessee.
I think they're riding the hype train too. So I think that plays a little bit into it. So
yeah,
it'll also just be hilarious if Tennessee beats Alabama but barely beat Pitt.
True. Yep. Yeah.
So Devin, who you got?
I got Bama covering.
Bama by 2 scores.
Bama by at least 10.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. All right.
Bryce Young or not. I think Tennessee's a fraud. I don't think they're any good.
Well, what sucks is then if Tennessee is a fraud, Alabama's going to look like world beaters. Like, oh, we beat the number 6 team on the road in Knoxville, 103 strong or whatever Knoxville holds.
Is it 95? 90?
I think it's above
they're over
100.
Oh, it is? Oh.
It's the fourth largest.
Maybe say third.
I think it's actually above the horseshoe.
Yeah, it's right up there with Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State. I think it's other than those three. I think it's the largest stadium.
Wow. Okay. Did not know that.
Yeah. So they're gonna pack it. I think game day's there, right?
Yeah,
I believe, yeah.
Is Corso back? That's a big question.
That is a huge question. We've missed him.
Yeah.
Supposedly,
What'd you say, Tim?
supposedly he is.
Okay.
But I don't care. I mean, give me more Pat McAfee.
Yeah.
He's awesome.
I like Pat McAfee, but nothing beats the Corso headgear pick.
Yeah.
Too iconic. All right, moving on. Zach, what's the next game we got?
We've got number 8. Oh, this is a big game that's kind of flying under the radar, I think, because of Alabama and Tennessee. You've got number 8 Oklahoma State at number 13 TCU. Both teams undefeated. Both teams have have everything in front of them. The winner of this game is in the driver's seat to potentially win the Big 12 and is still absolutely in the playoff hunt. I guess I'll start it off. I think it's gonna be a really good game. TCU's favored. What I saw was 3.5. It's at TCU. I think it's a toss-up game. I'm gonna go TCU, if for no other reason than they're at home, and they've looked really good at home so far.
Yeah, I mean that's all fair and valid, but I'm going opposite. Pistol Pete's out. We're gonna score some points this weekend, and I think Oklahoma State's gonna win by 10 at least. I watched TCU. I think they're decent, but it's still Big 12 and points is king, and I think Oklahoma State's got that offense clicking. So, Tim, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm going.
Go ahead. Or Devin, go ahead.
Go ahead, Devin.
I was going to go OK State. Clearly, I'm just kind of following Jordan here, but I think OK State is legit. I watching them the last couple games, I think they can score on anybody. It's a matter of can they get enough stops, and that's always the question with Big 12 teams. But if they score 60, it would not surprise me at all. Like not even a little bit.
I kind of just
OK State.
Yeah. I think OK State. I mean, they look phenomenal. And after this TCU game, like, who else do they really need to beat? Oklahoma's cakewalk, dog walk them all day. So
Texas
will be. Yeah.
Texas is back. Horns up. Just kidding. Horns down.
They might not be back, but I think they may factor into the Big 12 race.
But Quinn Ewers is back.
Yeah, he's so good.
The mullet.
All right, go ahead, Tim.
I'm also going to go with the Cowboys. I like what they're doing. Gundy, he wins some big games. Even over the past few years, they're always competitive. I like TCU. Max Dugan, he's legit. It's going to be a shootout, but I lean more towards Spencer Sanders. He's been in these big games before, so give me the Cowboys.
All right. Did we? Oh, we didn't miss a game yet. Zach, which game do you want to cover next? NC State.
Yeah, absolutely. Another game between two ranked teams, with one being undefeated. We've got number 15 NC State going to the Carrier Dome, taking on number 18 Syracuse.
I'll turn it over to Devin because he's always good for a good basketball matchup. So.
Yeah, I thought about going basketball here, but I just don't know enough about NC State this year to know for their basketball team. Regardless, so I went with Jordan's strategy for NC State of I own their T-shirt, so I picked them. However, going to the Carrier Dome is tough, and if Syracuse is at all legit this year, which they beat Purdue, which apparently is a good win for Penn State, if Syracuse is at all legit, they should win this game because going to the Carrier Dome is tough. I don't think they're legit. I think NC State is much better, and I am blown away that Syracuse is not only favored but by 4.5 points. So I'm going NC State huge. NC State by 30. Like I think they blow them out.
So I'm going opposite. I think NC State struggles against teams in orange. So I'm taking the Cuse at
Great
the
strategy.
Carrier Dome. But I think it's going to be a much closer game. I think the Cuse win it as I like to say, as time expires, Devin, with a field
I like
goal
to say that.
as time expires.
With 6 minutes to go.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Tim, you want to go next?
Sure. I'm also going to go with the Wolfpack. I agree with Devin wholeheartedly. I don't know how Syracuse is 18th in the nation. They've played nobody outside of Purdue. I don't get it at all. Give me NC State.
So you don't think that teams whose best win is Purdue should be ranked very high?
No, I said outside of Purdue. That's their best win. Look at their schedule.
They're
played,
literally Penn
There's
State.
There's a team in the top 10 who is undefeated whose best win is Purdue. Granted, our win was at Purdue, but
at Purdue. We also played at Auburn, but whatever. You're getting me off track.
We don't know his top 10 yet, so we can't say if Penn
That's
State
true.
is top 10.
NC State by 2 touchdowns. Yeah.
2 touchdowns, man.
so I like
I
Syracuse.
said by 30, so
We got a big spread here. I'm somewhere in the middle. I think it's going to be a good game. I'm making my pick on the assumption that Devin Leary is not going to play. And I don't think that's been confirmed, but he didn't play, or he came out of the Florida State game, which NC State had a nice gritty win over Florida State, who's solid and competent. But, Devin Leary is a really good quarterback. And I think if he doesn't play, that's a problem going on the road. And I don't think Syracuse is great, but they've been gritty, and the Purdue win's a good win. As much as I just mocked him, I think Purdue's a solid team. So I'm going Syracuse.
All right. And then for our next game, a game I could care less who wins. I hope they both lose. LSU at Florida. I'm sick of betting for LSU because I feel like it's LSU, and I don't know. I'm going with the Swamp. Give me them Gators. They're coming off the Hurricane dead guy game. I'm all about it.
okay.
Well,
That's all I
speaking of
got
dead
for-
guys, Brian Kelly,
Is he
obviously,
dead?
he loses this game, and all of a sudden he's got 3 losses, and we're basically at the halfway point of the season. So, how hot does the seat get in LSU? I'm going to go with Florida. I think this is a toss-up game between two teams that have talent and have showed flashes of some real potential this year, but have also been very flawed and have had poor games. I think it's a toss-up game, and Florida's at home, so I'm going Florida.
I like it. And I think with Brian Kelly too, I think they brought him in knowing that he's going to have to rebuild a little bit. So I think he has a little bit of grace period, but you have more than one losing season, you're gone in LSU, even if you win a national championship. So Devin, what you got?
I'm exactly with could not care less about this game. So I'm going to go LSU just to try to get a 2-for-1. That's my reasoning.
Of course, I set it up for the game you don't care about.
Yeah, I could not care less about this.
Tim?
Yeah, I will also go with Florida just because they're in the Swamp. I think Anthony Richardson makes a couple more big plays than LSU's quarterback, which I'm not sure. I forget his name already, but yeah, I'll go
Daniels.
Oh, that's right. Yes. That's right. I'll go with Anthony Florida.
All right. Zach, you want to preview the next one?
Yep. So for what seems like the 4th week in a row, Clemson is playing in the ABC primetime slot.
And they're like Michigan and Big Noon.
And they've got that's right. Yeah, they've got Florida State in Doak Walker. So Clemson goes on the road to take on unranked Florida State. We'll start with Devin.
I got Clemson. Free Shoe U is not going to be able to hang with them. I think Clemson is good. I really do. I think the ACC is trash. I think they win the ACC. They go to college football playoff and they get blown out by Bama or Georgia, but they're good enough to do that. So I think they beat Florida State pretty safely.
All right.
Tim, who do you got?
I'm actually going to go with the upset. I'm taking Florida State. Doak Walker, tough place to play, even if Florida State's down. Yeah, I do like Clemson. They've had their moments. I just think the Wake Forest game, they could have lost that one. I think Florida State will get them here with this one. So I'll take the Noles.
I am gonna take my pick solely based on stadiums that have 2 goalposts in the goal or in the end zone. I'm going with Florida State.
Nice.
I think more stadiums need to have that. So that's what I'm basing my pick on this week. Florida State by 14.
Right now, LSU's like
Oh,
Like, what are we, trash?
they have two, but so I think there's a chance of an upset here. I think Florida State has shown a lot of signs of improvement under Mike Norvell this year. Really close loss to Wake Forest, really close loss to NC State. And I agree with Devin. I think Clemson's good. I don't think they're great. And my concern is if they win this game, they're going 12-0 because they've already played Wake, they've already played NC State. They get through Florida State. There's nobody else.
They haven't played Pitt yet.
They will play Syracuse. They don't play Pitt until maybe the Pitt might win the other division and they might see them in the championship game. But I just don't really want to see Clemson go 12-0. I don't want the ACC in the playoff. But that said, I think Clemson wins.
Yeah, no ACC. Give me 2 Big 12 teams.
Ooh.
More likely to see no Big 12 teams probably, but
I mean, it's 2 SEC teams, the Big 10 champion, and then
USC, Clemson.
USC, Clemson, or Oklahoma State. One of those 3.
Well, I think that leads into our next game.
No,
Oh, we got one more before the USC game. We'll do number
Pac-12 after dark last.
Yeah,
Always.
we'll do number 16 Mississippi State, who's really gaining some momentum under Mike Leach, at number 22 Kentucky, who's going in the opposite direction at the moment. So we'll start. I'll start off. I'm going to go Mississippi State. I think we were talking earlier. I think Will Levis is going to play, is what we're hearing. But they're kind of in a tailspin right now. I'm interested to hear Jordan's take because I think he thinks South Carolina is like the worst team in the history of organized sport, and they were able to go into Kentucky and win. So I just feel like something's not right in terms of Kentucky at the moment, and Mississippi State's going in the opposite direction. And I'm a huge Mike Leach fan, so if for no other reason than that, I'm going to go Mississippi State.
Yeah, see, here's my opinion on Kentucky. Stick to basketball because I think they are trash. And you can't lose South Carolina because they're garbage. And Spencer Rattler, like, you can't let that dude beat you. That's all I got to say about that. Yeah, I'm taking Mississippi State by at least 8.5 points, maybe 10. I think they get it done. Mississippi State, say what you want, they're well coached. I think they get it done at Kentucky, which I don't know why Kentucky's still ranked, to be honest.
Because they need to be for Ole Miss to be high, so that when Alabama beats Ole Miss, that counts a lot for Alabama. And
I don't think Alabama's beaten Ole Miss this year. Hot take. Heard it here first.
we'll see.
Alabama's going to have 2 regular season losses, at least.
Yeah,
Because they're going to lose this week. You have them losing this week.
they should have lost 2 already.
Yeah.
Maybe. Maybe.
It's got to catch up.
Who do we got left here? We'll go to Tim. Mississippi State at Kentucky.
Yeah, I love the Bulldogs. I love hearing that cowbell. I think Will Rogers is one of the more underrated quarterbacks, not only in the SEC, but the whole country. And Mike Leach, he's a schemer. He'll come out on top. I think they'll be Kentucky. So go Bulldogs.
Yeah, you don't watch out, I'll put you in a woodshed.
Coach Devin.
All right, I'll go Kentucky.
I knew you were going that way. It was a 1-for-3 swing there.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't really care about this game. So I'm going to root for Will Levis. I know I shouldn't because he left Penn State, but I hope he plays well.
I mean, I'd leave Penn State too if I couldn't beat out Sean Clifford.
Yeah.
So the
But
last
now he's
game,
gonna go top 10 in the draft. So, and Sean Clifford's not.
And neither of them are going to have an NFL career, so it doesn't matter.
Correct. But it doesn't matter if you have a career. If you get drafted in the top 10, you still make that money.
You can
That's
get
all
more
that
in
matters.
NLI money.
Well, maybe.
Ask Spencer
Stay
Rattler.
for 6 more years. Then he'll make as much as Sean Clifford.
Exactly. Well, Sean Clifford owns the business now too.
That's
Double
right, I forgot
dipping.
about that. He should sponsor us.
Professor.
I've reached out to them. I didn't hear back.
Shocking.
so the last game, Jordan referenced it a little bit ago, the Pac-12 After Dark. I'm not sure exactly what time this one's airing, and hopefully it's not on the Pac-12 network because I think it's a pretty big game. number 7 USC at number 20 Utah. We'll start with Devin.
Oh, I was hoping not get this one. So it's an 8 o'clock on Fox game, which is perfect. So it's barely after dark, which is great. It's not after dark for them.
Barely after dark.
Utah is 3.5-point favorites. I think USC wins this one big. I think they go to Utah, they stomp them out, they hold them to less than 10 points, and they run away with it. And people start really talking about USC. So I don't know.
That's
on your shirt, Jordan. So you got to pick USC, right?
You would think, but I'm actually for this game, it's the portal at polygamy. Either way, they got people at multiple positions. I'm taking Utah. I don't believe the USC hype. I think Utah, I think they get it done. I've had this game circled for a while. I think USC finally goes on the road and plays a good team. Not that I don't think Oregon State's not a good team, but I think they really, get that true road test and they don't come out on top.
Interesting. I'll go next and we'll save Tim for last, I guess. I am also taking Utah, which feels a little weird considering how poorly they played against UCLA. But I think Utah is a better version of Oregon State and does what Oregon State does. And USC, and I'm going to sound like a Joel Klatt clone if you listen to his podcast today. USC is
friend of the
#1
podcast.
nice, nice shameless plug there. But USC is actually #1 in the country in sacks and interceptions, and they're #1 in team defense in the Pac-12. But I think it's kind of hollow because they basically only play from the lead, and so they can just chase the quarterback, get after the quarterback, get sacks, cause interceptions. And the one game where they didn't play from the lead, they escaped by the skin of their teeth at Oregon State. And again, I think Utah does what Oregon State does, but has better players. So I think it's a game where they're in a dogfight, and defensively, if they're not ahead, teams can run on them. So I think Utah has a chance to run the ball, hang onto the ball, keep Caleb Williams on the sideline, and just take USC out of their comfort zone. So I'm going Utah. And then Tim, last but not least.
You bring out the good information, that's for sure. I'm also going to go.
Brings it out, but
good friend of the podcast.
Yeah, dear friend.
I'm also going to go with Utah, Salt Lake City.
Another 3-for-1.
Tough place to play at. The USC, they snuck out of Corvallis with a big win, but Utah's a different beast. I think the Utes the UCLA is really good this year, and going out to LA is not easy. So, I'll go with the Utes here to knock off the USC.
I like it. So all good stuff. That was the last pick 'em, right?
Super dog?
Yeah.
You got a super dog, Zach?
I don't have a super dog this week.
Before the super dog, I just wanted to know,
don't worry about it.
The last four, actually the last four picks were all Tim, Jordan, and I were on the same team, and Devin was on the other. So it could be another week where Devin could end up in the lead, or it could go either way.
So far down, he's not coming.
Go back down again, or maybe more likely they'll probably kind of balance out.
Probably split.
I think there's a lot of games there where, and in just looking at the spreads, I mean, there's a lot of toss-up games there. But super dog, I'm gonna go first, and not because I think anyone's gonna steal this pick.
Oh man,
Nebraska is +14, and they will go into Ross-Ade Stadium, and not only will they cover that spread easily, they will beat Purdue.
Oh,
I hate it, but I don't.
Yeah, 14 is too much of a spread. Wow.
I'm not doing a super dog this
I know
week.
Jordan's not going to do one. I actually wrote down 3 potential super dogs in case Zach took mine. I think the most obvious one probably is Kansas getting 9 points against Oklahoma. I think that one's a little too obvious, so I'm not going to take it. Instead, I'm going to go a little off map and to another basketball school, the University of Connecticut, getting 9.5 points against Ball State. This would put UConn at 500 for the first time in like 66 years. I made that stat up, but it feels like it. So I'm going to take UConn as my super dog to to cover that spread and to beat Ball State. The other thing, Jordan, if you want, our Friday night, UTSA, your boys, the Roadrunners,
Oh yeah.
they are 33.5-point favorites at Florida International.
I don't think that's enough
I think
points.
Florida International might be able to cover that one, but it's going to be
I don't think it's enough
33.5.
I think they win by 50.
They might. I mean, Florida International is terrible, but
Florida International, the airport has a football team.
yeah,
Is that it? Is that
play
Fort
on
Lauderdale or?
FIA?
on the pavement.
All right. Well, we got about 5 minutes left here, so let's just go right in. We'll do our top 10s. Tim, you can stay on and comment on the top 10s or provide your own if you want. I'm going to start us off. I'm going Ohio State #1 this week. Just to forewarn you, I took Alabama out of my top 10 because I hate them, and that's all I'm going to say
He
about
was
them.
legit for 1 week and then just gave up.
Yeah. So I got Ohio State. 2, going to be a shocker. I think UCLA might be the second best team in the country right now. They look unbeatable, and every home game is
Except for
the hardest
South
environment
Alabama.
to play in. It's like COVID year. It's wild. There's like nobody there. It's a ghost town. So I got UCLA, Clemson at 3, Georgia at 4. I hate Clemson at 3. I hope they lose, but resume has to be important at some point, I guess, and they keep winning. So,
But not Bama.
that's what I got. I got Tennessee at 5, especially since they're going to beat that trash Alabama team this week. They'll move up a little bit. Michigan 6, USC 7, Oklahoma State 8, Ole Miss at 9, and then got to go with the home team at 10. So, other than the first 2 picks and not having Alabama in there, it's pretty solid, I think.
Okay. So I try to preface. I make sure everyone knows that out of our group chat, I'm always the first one to send a top 25 because I don't want anyone to accuse me of copying them. So I'm always the first. So I have Ohio State at #1. I moved them up. I did it before Jordan, so he copied me.
I straight up looked at your top 25 and then took out Alabama and then kind of just played.
It makes sense because then at 2 I have Alabama, 3 I have Georgia, 4 I have Clemson, 5 Michigan. Honestly, if Michigan wins this week, they might be #1. I don't know. 6 USC, 7 Go Cowboys, Oklahoma State, 8 I have Ole Miss, 9 Penn State, and 10 Tennessee. Even though I don't think they're good. So there you go. I think I have UCLA at 11 or 12. I don't remember.
It's kind of crazy we have this many undefeated teams still. Which I think I saw something. It's the top 10. Like first time there's been like 3 undefeated matchups in the same
late
weekend.
In the seasons in quite some time. Yeah, I saw that too. I don't feel good about the top 3. I think everybody other than Jordan has Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama in some order, and they've all been flawed and they've all given you reason. Well, maybe not Ohio State. I don't think they've really met their match yet, but in any event, I've got Georgia 1. I think they kind of recorrected last week. I've got Ohio State 2. They're just, they just annihilated Michigan State. I've got Clemson at 3. I don't feel good about it, but they have played 3 straight games against really quality opponents and they've won. So
alleged quality opponents.
Well, Boston College.
I mean, two of the last 3. I think Wake Forest and NC State are competent, solid top 25 teams that you got to give them credit for winning, especially back to back. So Clemson 3, I've got Alabama 4. I think they're flawed, and I think they're more flawed than just Bryce Young getting hurt. We're going to find out a lot about them this week, whether Young plays or not. I've got USC 5. Even though I kind of trashed them a little bit there a few minutes ago with my Utah pick, I do think they are really good, and I think if they can play from ahead, they will be very, very difficult to beat because their offense is so good and their defense is set up to do what you need to do when you have a lead. I've got Michigan at 6, and Devin hit on it a minute ago. If they get a big win against Penn State, they're probably going to climb in my ranking. I've got Tennessee at 7, same thing. If they get a big win over Alabama, they're probably climbing in my ranking. I've got Oklahoma State at 8. I've got UCLA at 9. I'm really impressed with them too. I've got TCU at 10, Ole Miss at 11. Penn State is actually moved back to 12 for me.
15.
So I think there's just teams that have been doing stuff that in the last couple of weeks that Penn State just hasn't been able to match, and so they just kind of have to fall back a little bit. Not because I think they're not because I feel worse about them. I just think some other teams have done some things.
Yep.
That's fair. Yep.
You got anything else you want to add, Tim? You want to give your
Anybody
maybe
we're
just give
missing,
your top 5 or?
Oh no, I didn't really. I just studied the picks, so
Okay.
didn't really get to do the top 10. But yeah, they're pretty. Everybody's pretty good except for yours with the Bama. I mean, they still got to be top 10, but
Come the end of the year, they're not going to be a top 10 team. So
Thoughts
mean-
on UCLA at number 2? How did that feel for you?
oh yeah, that's
They look unbeatable unless they play South Alabama.
Yeah.
that's
32-31.
their quarterback DTR. He's legit. He should get some Heisman love if he keeps it up. But
he
I
got some
will
Heisman
say-
love in our.
I mean,
Heisman
it would
polls.
be nice. It would be nice to see, like, I would actually like to see them kind of become sort of like a mini power. Just Chip Kelly's cool. Everybody likes Chip Kelly, and to have that.
Unless you're from
UCLA
Philadelphia.
Well,
I don't
to have
like
that USC. I mean, at the end of the year, if UCLA keeps this up and USC stays hot, that's going to be a huge game at the end of the year. I mean, that's going to be like an Ohio State Michigan type game, and I think it'll be fun. As much as we love to rag on the Pac-12, I look back to the the early 2000s when USC was a power, and you had a couple other schools in the Pac-12 that were really competent. And I think the sport is better when you have a couple teams out on the West Coast that are good. I know we make fun of Pac-12 after dark, but I think it's better. I just think it's better for the sport if you have that.
If you're
We
going to
love
keep me up,
Pac-12 after dark.
at least make the games good. Let me
And don't
rephrase that. If
follow
I'm going to fall
Pac-12
asleep
network.
watching your game, it better be at least entertaining. But
Yeah,
that
it'll be Mountain West after dark once the Pac-12 folds.
yeah,
It's true.
it'll be Big 10 after dark.
Oh, there you go.
Big 10 Pod 3 after dark. But
Pod
I think that's
4.
going to wrap it up. Unless you guys got anything else. It's probably
Nope,
our longest one yet.
Big games
so-
this week.
What'd you
Yeah,
say?
Big
I'll say
games. Go Penn
Big
State.
games. Yep. So that's all I got. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching the Nittany No Huddle podcast.
Check us out on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
Podcasts are posted weekly on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss one of our new shows.